What's the difference between a healthy and an unhealthy environment? When we think of how chemicals are affecting living things around the world, we maybe think of an environment that isn't healthy anymore, and how it sucks, right? But we don't really see the extreme effects on living things after there's a chemical imbalance. How the health and distribution of that ecosystem has changed forever, and how we need to prevent more ecosystems and living things from dying because of something like pH, dissolved oxygen, or salinity. How we need to try to make our industries and practices a little bit cleaner for the better of our planet and the organisms living on it. Chemical factors like this can have two big effects on an environment and the organisms that live there. One is the basic health of these living things that can be monitored by looking at the different abiotic factors and how they respond. The other is the distribution of living things. Distribution is the range in which the organisms can live and survive in their habitat. So what are these chemical factors that make these changes to an environment? One of them is pH. The acidity of a substance can be drastic to an organism's health. If soil is too acidic or too basic, plant life will suffer. If a body of water is too acidic or too basic, the water will no longer support life. And some organisms have adapted to have a higher pH tolerance. But when there's a lake full of life one year and dead the next because of acidity, it isn't pretty. Another factor is the amount of nutrients in an ecosystem. Nutrients accumulates or builds up in the environment and is returned to it through plant and animal remains. But too much nutrients, like fertilizer, will run off into lakes, rivers, or oceans after raining. This will provide nutrients for the algae, causing it to grow at a much faster rate. The overgrown algae will block out the sunlight, reducing the amount of dissolved oxygen in the water. Fish and other aquatic animals require a certain amount of that dissolved oxygen to survive, and they will die without it. This starts an entire chain reaction of ruining the health of the environment. One more factor that highly changes the chemistry of different organisms is salinity. The amount of salt in an environment can kill plants because it prevents essential growth by restricting the uptake of nutrients through the roots. It affects animals through osmosis because saltwater animals have a balanced amount of salt inside their bodies to the amount outside in the water. But when extra salt comes into their bodies, their proper organ functions start to fail. It's the same reasons humans can't drink salt water. But when we use salts for our big industries, or when we're just de-icing our roads, it gets caught up in the runoff, and we can doom these organisms. So many other factors that we need to start monitoring more and trying to prevent. And it isn't a reasonable solution to shut down all of our industries that we need in our lives that are producing many of these chemicals into the air, soil, and water. But we also need to start protecting the health of all of these living organisms and ecosystems on our Earth. What's the difference between a healthy and an unhealthy environment? Fish and other aquatic animals require a certain amount of that dissolved oxygen to survive. Okay, cool. That's the end.